Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of UCB on Mission. Listen, if you are a Christian, then you are following Jesus on his mission to love God and love neighbor. My part of the mission looks different than your part of the mission, so UCB on Mission is a place where we get to learn together about our work as a church family on the mission of God, as the Apostle Paul says. So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God. This afternoon, we're coming live from my bedroom, and our special guest is Kelly Baxley. Hey, Kelly, you're on. Welcome to UCB on Mission. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks for enduring my technical difficulties. Listen, if you're on the live chat and you have questions for Kelly Baxley, please list your questions up there on the live chat, and we'll ask them as we have time. Make sure to say hello in the live chat. Kelly, why don't you introduce yourself to us and to our listeners?
All right. I'm Kelly Baxley. I am married to Andrew Baxley. I have two little boys, which a lot of you know, Thomas and Silas. We have been in Bogota almost 3 years. I'm a counselor at the United Church of Bogota, and I'm from Memphis, Tennessee originally.
Awesome, Kelly. And did you already mention what seminary you went to? My favorite seminary?
I went to Covenant Seminary, where I got my Master's of Arts in Counseling.
Excellent. And yeah, I was excited to read good news about Covenant Seminary, and our friend, the future Dr. Paul Loosemore, is going to be on staff.
Okay.
That was very exciting.
He was my classmate, so
yeah, that's cool. It's very
I'm
cool.
pretty proud.
Well, we're going to protect you from getting poached by Covenant Seminary because we want you to be our counselor at UCB. All right, so counseling may be a different concept for people. Let's just start with terms. What do we call you? We call you like a psychologist or a psychiatrist or a therapist. You've used the word counselor. What do you prefer?
Well, I think at our church, I think I'm a counselor, and I do therapy, and so I'm also in the States. I'd be a therapist and a counselor, but in our church, I think the word I would choose to use the most would be I'm a counselor.
Good.
So.
All right. So last week I introduced a new segment called Questions from a Kid. It's time for what will become our favorite segment on this program, Questions from a Kid.
It's time for Questions from a Kid.
All right, and I happen to have a kid with me today. The kid is Mr. Fox Lupton. Hey, Fox. Good. Fox, you have some questions for Ms. Kelly. What is your first question?
Well, what is a counselor?
That's a good question. What is a counselor? A counselor is when someone has kind of like Silas calls them boo-boos. We'll say a heart boo-boo. A problem. Yeah, it could be also something in their emotions, but also maybe they have problems in their relationship with their family or family members, and they need help trying to figure out how to not feel better, but how to deal with their feelings and how to maybe love their neighbor better.
Okay.
And love God better.
That's pretty cool. All right, what's your next question, Fox?
Why did you choose to become a counselor?
Well, I was a missionary in China for 2.5 years when I was like 22, 23 years old to 25 years old. And when I was a missionary, I realized that a lot of missionaries had, stories. They had families they came from, and some of them still had hurt feelings that they hadn't really thought about or figured out how they were going to sorry, let me think about it. They have stories and they were affected by their story, and they hadn't really figured out how to deal with that in the present moment. Maybe some things from the past were affecting him in the present. And I realized I really wanted to help missionaries and international workers be healthy and not have so many like heart boo-boos that affected them and their ministry. And so that was the original reason that I wanted to come to the United States to get my counseling degree.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did you know that Miss Kelly lived in China?
Nope.
So she probably speaks a little bit of Mandarin.
Ni hao.
Ooh, there you go. Do you know any?
No. I only know how to say it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. What's your last question, Fox?
My last question, let's see. Do you do your job with your family? Like when someone is sad, do you help them talk about it?
That is such a good question. Well, Andrew does not like me to be his counselor. So no, not with my husband. And I don't necessarily think it's good to, I think it's good for me to be his wife. So I just am kind of his wife. But with Silas and Tommy, really more so with Silas because he talks, I can use some of the skills that I've learned as a counselor to help him name his feelings. And so I'm not his counselor, but I do use some of the tools that I've learned to kind of help him handle his emotions when he's overwhelmed. And I know as a toddler, that happens a lot. I don't know if you remember those days, but.
Well, you live with a toddler, so you understand how toddlers are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
I understand how Luke was.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions?
No.
Excellent questions, buddy. Thank you for your. Okay. Awesome. Kelly, what are some of the tools that you have in your tool bag that you use as a counselor?
Good question. I'm going to speak to my husband who's listening in the other room. I can hear myself, and that's why I'm getting kind of jumbled. So I wonder if he can turn the volume down.
He will hear that in about 20 seconds, and he'll do it.
Okay. Yeah, my brain can't handle like lots of things going on at once, so I get distracted. So the question was, what are some tools that I have as a counselor, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, well, I am trained in a trauma therapy called EMDR. I'm not even going to try to explain it.
Yeah.
But because it's too complicated. But it is one of the most effective PTSD treatments right now. And so that is one tool in my toolbox that I use in my office. I'm actually trained in some trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy. And that was created for children. And so I currently don't do a lot of work with children, but in the future, that's something I see myself doing a lot of. And I think the main tool that I use in the counseling room is strange enough to say is myself, because so much of counseling is the relationship and creating safety. And I think question asking is a big tool for counselors, and drawing out and letting people explore their own heart. So, yeah.
So part of the purpose of this program is to connect our work, our day-to-day lives with the bigger mission of God. You've already said a few things that have made me think, but how is what you are doing as a counselor connected to God's big mission?
Gotcha. Well, obviously, I believe, and if the fall didn't happen, we wouldn't have doctors, we wouldn't have counselors, we wouldn't have wounds, physical wounds, emotional wounds, we wouldn't have them. And so I think in a perfect world, our relational needs would be fully met. We wouldn't have a need for forgiveness we wouldn't need forgiveness. We wouldn't need to offer it and extend it. But we do live in a fallen world, and also the fall has affected our brain and even the chemistry of our brain for some people when they're born. Some people are born with a proclivity for depression or proclivity for anxiety. And all of that is kind of connected to living in a broken world. So I think that part of the mission is God came to the earth to make all things new. And when he intended to do that, he wanted to bring shalom and peace to our whole bodies. So not just to our spiritual world, but to our body and our mind and our feelings. He wanted to redeem all of us, and the sin has affected all of us. And so I think one part of being on mission with God is bringing redemption to our hearts, the parts of our hearts that are really broken and stuck. I feel like one of my goals is to help people find healing and meet Jesus in those places that they're most deeply wounded, those places where they're stuck, or maybe trauma has kind of spoken truth over them that they want to be set free from. And I think I've seen God release people from lies that Satan really would want to communicate to them and bring truth and healing. So I think it's all a part of God bringing shalom, God bringing wholeness and healing to humanity.
Yeah, it's beautiful. When you're talking about what your tools are, one of the things you're telling us is that you yourself are used as a tool of God to bring about His shalom, His healing, His restoration. Give people a taste of what it's gonna be like when He does make all things new. That's incredible. We're privileged to have you do that at our church. So I want to get to COVID-19 in just a minute, but before I get there, you said while you were in China, you realized that on the mission of God, there's this huge need for people to do work on their relationships, work on their hearts and their minds. If you're sitting with someone, let me ask it this way. So someone who's watching this program may be wondering, how would I know if I'm a candidate for doing counseling with somebody like Kelly? Now, you know my philosophy. My philosophy is that all of us should do counseling at some point. It is so good for us. But yeah, what would you tell somebody who's watching this wondering, I wonder if I could use something like that?
Well, one thing I want to say is I think that if you are in community, and I don't know if you can see my little notifications, good. If you're in community and you are being honest and open and vulnerable with the people in community, I mean, that is really God's design for I think healing in the church. And that's like why we do small groups. That's why we encourage honesty. That's why we do restoration groups, because we see God bringing a lot of healing in community within our church. Now, I do think that counseling would be beneficial to anyone, and I think I've benefited enormously from getting counseling myself. But I think the majority of people that come see me are people that kind of feel stuck. And I liken it to the metaphor of kind of being off-roaded. Like you normally were on the highway and you were with everyone else and you were engaging with everyone else as you were driving in the same direction, and something happened, you got broken down, and you're on the side of the road, and you don't have as many people or resources to really help you get back on the road again. And I think counseling is kind of having someone sit with you in the driver's seat and not do the work for you, but support you, maybe resource you, kind of reconnect you back to Jesus. and back to community and back to your own heart, kind of reset. And so I think anyone that kind of feels like their anxiety, depression is overwhelming, whereas in their community groups, maybe even like the people around them are kind of like, I don't know what to say. I don't know what to do here. Maybe you should talk to someone that knows a little bit more about these things, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I see people that come to see me.
Yeah.
Or people that come to see me.
I love your metaphor. So if you're driving on the road, you're in community, you're thinking healthy thoughts, you understand what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, and you're feeling it at the right times, and keep driving on the road, right?
Yeah.
If suddenly you find yourself off-road or you're stuck on the side of the road, you may need somebody like Kelly or Chris, who's our other counselor, to jump in the car with you and help you reorient and bring about a little bit of restoration to get you back on the path of healing and restoration. Yeah, that's a beautiful image. So, Kelly, let's talk about COVID-19 because it's this incredible disruption to everything normal for us. And so all of us, I expect, in the past 2 months, have found ourselves stalled out on the side of the road with anxiety or frustration or depression or grief or whatever. And so the counseling community is obviously talking about such a big picture phenomenon like COVID-19 and its impact. What is the counseling community noticing about life now in these conditions?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that a couple things. One thing they're noticing is that doing online calls, Zoom, if you have to do a lot of Zoom calls, if you're still online all the time, because we are made in the image of God and because we're embodied souls, God has made us to interact with other bodies and to really receive, healing when we're around people. And so the fact that we're not being able to be around people, or really you're around to be around some bodies in your house, makes your brain work extra hard. So when you're on Zoom, like 85% of communication are nonverbal. And so your brain is working super hard to try to figure out what someone is really communicating to you, but because you're not with them and you can't really get everything that they're saying and connect. So it's like, I read that it's kind of like a cell signal going out that never fully connects. And that is exhausting. So I think if you're feeling, I think people are seeing that people are more exhausted, even though they're not doing as much. Being quarantined makes you more tired. Being on Zoom calls makes you more tired. I read an article that said that maybe two to three is max that your brain can really handle on a day.
2 to 3 per.
And that,
2 to 3
per day.
Per day. Wow, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I think there's also a lot of talk about the word grief and a kind of grief that's called anticipatory grief, and which that in itself is also anxiety. We are all anxious because of the uncertainty of a bad thing that has happened, and we don't know when this bad thing is going to end, and we don't really know. Yeah, we don't know what's going on. So I think in a sense we are all grieving collectively as a world for the very first time ever. We've never collectively grieved anything altogether, and so because we're all in it all together, we're all in the same boat, which is just new territory to navigate. We don't have any experts. I'm grieving. I'm a counselor, but I'm also grieving. And so that is just something interesting that's happening right now. I think that the counseling community is also realizing how much humans need plans and structure. And I think that we thrive well when we have something to look forward to. We thrive well in rhythms and structure. And I think that's really hard to create in a quarantine, especially in a big city like Bogota when you can't get outside, which I heard that you can get outside in the morning, which is great. Let me see what else I wrote down that I thought was helpful to say. Yeah, I would say those are some things that people are mostly noticing is the exhaustion, feelings of grief, and just this need for connection, but not feeling fully connected.
Yeah. So I'm thinking a lot of things. One, I feel peace, knowing that it is okay that perhaps I accomplish less and feel way more exhausted than in my normal life. I suspect other people feel that way too. One of our viewers, Andrew Baxley, says only one Zoom call wears him out. So he wants to lower the bar to one per day, which is probably not going to work, Baxley, but we can talk about that. I'm so interested in this concept that the whole world is grieving. And would you say, in general, Kelly, that people just know how to grieve in a healthy way?
I don't know. I don't know if I can answer that question because I think certain cultures are very good at it, and probably it becomes normal to them. Other cultures aren't so great at it.
Yeah.
So I think probably some people know what to do, and then some don't.
I didn't prepare you for this question, but you know the culture of our church, the people that will watch this in general. How are we as grievers? What are our tendencies? Ways we do it right and ways we don't do it right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I this is just my opinion, but I think Colombians are probably more accustomed to grief,
Right.
and probably better at it than maybe the Americans in our church. Well, there's so many cultures represented, so I can't speak for everyone, but I think that, yeah, I mean, I just want to say I've been very encouraged by a lot of the Colombians that I talk to because there's a level in which there's a quicker acceptance of something bad has happened. It deeply affects my daily life. And there's like an acceptance there. We have to stay inside. We have to do whatever it takes. Yeah, and I think that getting to that place of acceptance is really key for grief. Um, there's like stages of grief, and they're not linear. But I think one of them is like bargaining, and I think you see that a lot more maybe in the States where people are like, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to try to get out here and do this, and no, we can't, or they don't accept it. Like, no, it's not really that bad, or I don't know if that makes sense, but I find that there are, my experience is a lot of people in our church have gotten to the place of acceptance and almost gotten to the place of making meaning. Like, okay, Lord, here we are. What do you want to do? How do you want to make good? I hear people talking like that, which is kind of the last stage of grief, which obviously it's not linear, so you're kind of going in and out of the stages, but people are kind of finding meaning in this hard time, which is encouraging.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I think I would agree with you, Kelly. I see Colombians much more aware of what they're feeling and why, and able to enter into those places that are maybe off limits for North American. That we were taught intentionally or unintentionally to push down or to ignore or to distract. People in our church, I'm very proud of our church, and one of the reasons I love our church is many of our folks have entered intentionally into a high trauma lifestyle with all the moving, relocating, adjusting, cross cultural life and work. And so they're familiar with grief. They're familiar with what it feels like to not be able to just get out and do what you want, right? Because it feels that way when I move to a culture where I don't belong and I can't speak the language and I don't know where to go. So, one of the things I think I hear you saying is these rhythms of grieving when we make transitions. Let's tap into those rhythms as we deal with this global grief, this global trauma. Yeah. Okay, so when I was talking to Laura Doyle a few weeks ago on this program, I asked her a question like, "So, are you like helping your kids process through?" She's a teacher of kindergarten kids. Are your kids processing this with you? What's it like? And as I asked the question, I realized, oh shoot, am I processing this with my kids? And do I know how to do that? My 3-year-old, even today, is beginning some sentences with, "So, when coronavirus is over," and I'm just thinking, what a world we live in where a little 3-year-old starts her sentences with, "When this global pandemic is over." Those who are watching this program and are parents or grandparents or spend time with kids, maybe as educators, how would you help us help our kids process?
Yeah, well, I think whatever a child is experiencing right now, whether that be anxiety or maybe they're excited, maybe they're having a great time because you're at home with them and they're having fun, or but I think with kids, you don't ever want to shut them down, whatever their experiences of that of the quarantine of the virus. And I think it's okay to enter into their uncertainty with them, and not, have all the answers, but remain positive. Because kids need to know, they can't fully comprehend what's going on. I mean, we don't really comprehend what's going on, and so for their brains, I think it's hard. But I think focusing in on what you can do, to stay safe, and like there's just tons of YouTube videos for kids of what what we can control and what we can't control. So I think being positive about what we can control while we're in this state, but also giving them space. I think that's the key, is checking in. Maybe bi-weekly. How are you guys doing? How are you feeling? And just being attentive and attuned to their changing feelings. And I'm sure that their feelings are changing, and the more they're isolated, I'm sure the feelings intensify. And so I think it's simple, but just checking in and then validating their feelings.
You said one of your tools in your tool bag is asking good questions, and this art of asking good questions is one of the keys to the universe that I'm going to write in my book one day, that I want to learn from people like you and others who ask brilliant questions. You just said a couple questions we could ask our kids is, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Are there other questions that parents could have ready when they see their kids maybe exploding in a way they wouldn't explode in normal life? Or there are certain things we should be asking them. Do you miss this? Or how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, with some kids, I think doing an art project might get more to their heart, like doing an art project where the different colors are different emotions, and they can kind of fill in like a human outline, and name what it is and how much of each of these feelings they're feeling are. But you can do that with like Play-Doh, with different colored Play-Doh. I think art works great with kids, maybe some of them are more verbal, and direct questions would help. But maybe a creative check-in, a creative kind of artistic type check-in, which I could see that being helpful. I think naming emotions and giving vocabulary for kids is important. That's something we can do, And so I have a 2-year-old, and so I have to, notice what he's feeling and be like, are you feeling scared? And he's like, I scared. And it's like, okay, yeah. So it just depends on the age and the developmental stage. But I would think with kids, I think something interactive would be maybe more where they're at.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I have little ones, and so yeah, if anyone would like any tools related to their kids, I'm sure you've seen so much on YouTube, but I've also seen a lot, and I can maybe resource you with some ideas, so you can message me or email me privately.
Yeah. I'll put an email that folks can use under this video when we're finished. I think there's a counseling@ucb.org email that we can use for something like this. So what I hear you saying is interactive is good, questions are good, creative is good, allowing space, entering into and affirming what they're feeling. You mentioned anticipatory grief or anticipation grief. I can't remember how you said it, but is it healthy for us to dream with our kids about what life will look like, the trip we're going to take, the park we're going to play in when this is over?
I mean, I think so, because I think that we need that, and I think that nobody has said that this is going to be forever, and so there's not the facts that it's going to be different. I think life is going to look different, and we might have to adjust those dreams according to the reality. But no, I think that that's important to still dream and hope and get excited. And I was telling someone, having things to look forward to with kids is really important. Like on Fridays, we're doing a movie night, or on Saturdays, we get to eat this fun meal, but really, you need anticipation. You need kind of fun.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's very normal.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, Kelly, I want to, we're running out of time, unfortunately. I could keep talking to you because I find you and this fascinating. How do you dream about developing the counseling center at church? What do you want it to be for people and for the church?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the future, our goal in our church's heart would be we'd get some more professionals, and I think, I mean, I could even see us doing some, maybe even lay counselor training, having a team. I mean, that's my heart, is to have a team, because Chris and I are just two people, and we don't connect to every human being in the whole world. And so that's why it's nice to have different counselors. And so I think we would love to build a team of counselors, our helpers. And we would love our counseling center to serve our church, but I mean, we see it as an outreach to serve the community. And we've had the privilege of people in the church, referring us to people outside the church that come and they know it's Christian and they like it and they find it refreshing. They encounter grace, and that is really encouraging to my heart. And sometimes we have people come into the counseling center, never been to our church, but it's the first taste they get of maybe the ethos of our church. And then I think God has worked in that way to draw people to Himself through the heart. because we're dealing with people's hearts, and that's where Jesus meets people. And so I think in the future we'd love to have a team. We'd love to open it up more. Yeah, I think that's kind of what we're thinking.
Good. How would you ask someone who's watching this to pray for you and for Chris on your part of the mission before they close this video?
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about that, and I think the best way to pray is to pray that we are connected to the vine, and remain and rest in Jesus, because, and I think it's the same way you pray for people, like the pastor, and the pastors, that we are healthy, and that we, because I really think a large part of being a good counselor is being present with myself and with God. And I think I'm not a great counselor when I'm distracted and rushed and running around and but the good news is that God uses me in my weakness. So even the days where I feel like, I'm not on my game, meaning in my dependence game, he still uses me, which is nice, because he's faithful. But I think we need prayer to continue being present with the Lord, in our own personal lives, and being healthy in this time of the quarantine, which is harder.
Yes.
Just harder for everybody. So yeah, I'm also exhausted, and I'm also can't handle as much. And so yeah, discernment about what I can do and what I can't do. Yeah.
Good. Anything else?
No.
Okay. I want to pray for you, Kelly, and then we'll finish up here.
Sounds good.
Lord, thank you for Kelly. Thank you for Chris, and for this ministry of the counseling center that you've given our church. Lord, a few years ago, this was but a dream. It's always been a dream of mine to be able to have resources like this for your people. Thank you, Lord. Thank you for her. Thank you for Chris. Thanks for the folks in our church and in our community who've been able to benefit from your resources and your healing through them. Lord, you hear the requests, the heart of your servant. She longs for health. She longs for wholeness. She longs for connection to the vine. Apart from you, Jesus, she can do nothing. We can do nothing. And so would that connection be healthy and rich, full of energy, full of empathy, full of joy and fruit of the Spirit, that her life would be an overflow of you to other people, Lord. The same for Chris, Lord. Would you give them everything they need as they seek to serve you, Lord? Lord, we do ask for rest. We ask for healthy boundaries. We ask for discernment, deciding when and how, and whom to see, and everything that goes into what she does practically, Lord. Lord, I pray that you would grow this resource team. We're so thankful for these two, but oh, how our hearts dream for lay counselors, for other professionals, for people who are apprentices that come and serve with us, and serve us. Lord, we would love to see this ministry grow and grow to serve your mission in our church, in our city, and in our world, Lord. So I give you this ministry, praying that you would bless it richly, Lord, and bless Kelly and Chris. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you so much, Kelly. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing and educating us. One of our viewers says, "What an impressive young lady." You may be related to him. So anyways, he'll tell you a good job too. Thank you, Kelly. I'm going to kick you off here as I plug what's next for UCB on Mission.
Sounds good. Ciao.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Thanks again for joining us today for another episode of UCB on Mission. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on notifications if you haven't already. I don't want you to miss another episode of UCB on Mission when we have one. We'll have one this next week. I don't know the time or the guest just yet, but hopefully I'll be able to tell you very soon. If you're a Christian, you're on mission. And so I wonder what that mission will look like for you this week ahead. I'd love to talk about it very soon. Take care. Bye-bye.